After months without a step, I discovered an amazing secret my Dylan, his therapist, revealed. When Sarah first heard the words, community mural, she was standing in the stark, clinical confines of the therapy center, gripping the edge of her seat as her heart raced. Jake, her once enthusiastic 11-year-old, now sat despondent, arm in a brace, emotionless. The sound of laughter and encouragement from other children filled the room, suffocating her with memories of joy that felt worlds away. The air seemed thick with unfulfilled dreams, a stark reminder of what could have been. She felt like a ghost hovering at the periphery of happiness. Jake had suffered badly since the injury, becoming a dark mirror reflecting Sarah's own grief. Two shadows clashing against the sunlit walls of their lives. Every session was an agonizing repetition of forced smiles and hopeful reassurances she wasn't sure she believed anymore. Clinging to the remnants of her former self, she pushed through each day, but it felt impossible to carve a path back to joy. The once vibrant artist in her battled against the chaos of sorrow, blending paint and memories in a swirl of confusion. "Mom, what if I never get better?" Jake whispered one day, breaking the dam of silence. His words struck her like a blow. Would she still be who she was if he never bounced back? "You will," she replied, though her voice trembled. Inside, doubts clawed at her, forcing her to reckon with the weight of her unfulfilled aspirations. What if, in helping Jake, she lost herself even more? She hesitated, feeling the distance stretch like a chasm between them, amplifying her growing guilt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That day, as she settled into the corner of the therapy room, her attention snagged on a hushed discussion between Mr. Reynolds and Jake. They unveiled their plan, the mural, a project that could tether Jake's frustration into something grand. With excitement, she joined in, only to be struck by a mix of elation and dread. Hands painting, voices mixing, emotions uncovering. It was exhilarating, yet every brushstroke felt like a taunt. Was she forging a bond, or merely deepening their collective devastation? Each splash of color dragged her further into a whirlwind of creativity. Yet dark thoughts crowded her mind relentlessly. How could pursuing color unearth joy when Jake still felt trapped in despair? As vibrancy blossomed in the mural, she sensed resentment swelling in her child, that haunting belief that his recovery was now tied to her ambition. The triumph of creation morphed into battlegrounds of contention, with each argument feeling like a dagger, each tensioned whisper pushing her to reconsider the cost of rediscovering herself. Was it worth fracturing their fragile bond? As paint splattered across the canvas, the weight of their struggles hung in the air, unresolved and thick. Just as she was beginning to grasp at the threads of hope, the tension thickened, and an outburst from Jake echoed through the room. "This is supposed to be a celebration, but it feels so wrong." In that moment, she held her breath, not just for herself, but for the shimmering possibility of reconciling their dreams. The pulse of hope tightening like a noose. What lay ahead threatened to unravel everything she'd begun to mend. Could she confront the secrets buried beneath the surface? Or would they remain entangled in their unresolved fears, smeared over with paint yet to dry? The vibrant colors on the mural morphed into a kaleidoscope of tension, each brushstroke a reminder that she and Jake stood at a crossroads. Sarah's heart raced as she watched his face twist in conflicting emotions. Anger surged like tidal waves behind his eyes, forcing her to confront her own dissatisfaction with their journey. "What happens if we can't finish this?" he blurted, his voice barely more than a whisper. The question hung heavy in the air and reverberated through the core of her being. In that fleeting moment, Sarah felt the weight of expectation. She had thought this mural would be their revival, a celebration of hope. Yet it seemed to unravel fragile threads of connection, pulling them into disparate directions. How could they create beauty when their emotions sprawled across a battlefield of misunderstanding and fear? What if they had conjured an illusion, a facade of healing that only masked their deeper struggles? Grappling with her thoughts, Sarah realized that merely painting over the pain wouldn't suffice. She needed to delve into the raw emotions that simmered beneath the surface. "Jake, can we talk about this?" she proposed, her voice steadier than it felt. He crossed his arms instead of nodding, the defensiveness a barrier she desperately wished to dismantle. "I don't want to talk," he retorted, frustration morphing his features into a scowl. Yet, the intensity of his response ignited something within her. Perhaps this conversation was essential, not just for him, but for her too, to navigate the labyrinth of feelings threatening to engulf them both. "Please, let's not shy away from how we feel. If it's wrong, then let's say it's wrong. Together." Slowly, she saw his resolve soften, and for a brief moment, they connected. Two wounded souls caught in a tempest. But embracing that vulnerability was terrifying. The fear of exposing their scars loomed large over her heart. What if unveiling their emotions made everything worse? What if the raw honesty shattered everything she'd hoped for? However, holding back seemed equally detrimental. Fighting her instinct to retreat, Sarah took a deep breath. "I miss who we used to be," she admitted, her voice trembling as she watched the flicker of surprise in Jake's eyes. "Creating this mural, I thought it would mend what we've lost. But it feels like we're just lost." She could see Jake grappling with her words, his defenses slowly lowering, revealing glimpses of the boy he had been. "It feels fake," he sighed, the fight draining from him like an ebbing tide. "Like we're pretending to be happy when everything is just wrong." Those words sparked a wildfire within Sarah. It was as if Jake had peeled away the layers of denial she had worn for far too long. When had they lost the right to feel what they truly felt? Instead of concealing their sadness behind layers of paint, they could face it head-on. It was time to redefine their partnership, not just in art, but in life. With newfound determination, she seized the moment. "Let's bring our real emotions to this mural. The struggle, the joy, the hurt, all of it needs a place on this canvas. We'll pour ourselves into it, and maybe, through that, we'll find healing." As realization settled in, she felt the silence explode, charged with potential. They could turn this project into a genuine dialogue of pain and hope, capturing not only their journey, but also their resolve to move forward together. But could they truly embrace the messiness of their emotions? Would their bond strengthen or fracture under the weight of vulnerability? With uncertainty still looming, Sarah resolved to open her heart wide, inviting Jake on a journey that would challenge everything they believed and redefine their relationship. As she reached out to him, paintbrush poised, the blank canvas awaited, a mirror to their souls' struggles, reflecting what lay ahead. Was she ready to face the truth, no matter how raw? A deeper discovery awaited in their journey, unseen, but promising. The question now loomed large. Would they choose to dive into the depths of that shared truth, united by color and sentiment? Or would fear pull them away just when clarity beckoned them closer? Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she held the paintbrush above the canvas. "Let's start with how we feel right now," she suggested, her voice steady, fueled by an urgency she hadn't felt in months. She dipped the brush into a deep indigo, a color that echoed her own turmoil. With deliberate strokes, she let the indigo flow, capturing the gravity of their unresolved emotions, the weight of uncertainty, the gray of confusion looming like a storm. As the color bled into the canvas, she caught a glimpse of Jake's expression morph from anger to something softer, almost contemplative. This was their moment, a decisive turn, not just for the mural, but for their relationship. Each flick of her wrist transformed the blank surface into a mirror of their feelings, and she felt a pulse of electricity course through her veins. The spontaneous creativity was intoxicating. Every motion liberated a fragment of her soul. Jake stepped closer, the creases in his brow smoothing out as he observed her creation. "Can I try?" he asked, hesitating just long enough for Sarah to sense the vulnerability behind his request. Nodding, she offered him the brush, an act of trust that acknowledged both of their emotional investments. With Jake holding the brush, she watched as he wrestled with the choice of colors. It was clear he grappled with his own balance of joy and sorrow. Finally, he chose a vibrant crimson, highlighting the passionate moments they shared, the love that initially bonded them. When he painted over the indigo, it was a tangible representation of their struggle, layering their complexity onto the canvas. "Maybe we need to let the emotions play out like this," Jake murmured, almost to himself. "Not hide the anger, but embrace it." Their silent agreement coursed through the air, a shared resolve to face their truth, however uncomfortable. As he painted alongside her, Sarah felt an unfamiliar exhilaration. Each brushstroke brought clarity. Exhilaration surged with every bold line, pushing her to confront fears she'd kept locked away. What if this mural was the first step toward something larger? What if we included the parts we've hidden? Sarah suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. The frustrations we never shared, the expectations we placed on each other, and the guilt we both feel. Jake hesitated but then dipped the brush back into the crimson, this time layering it more aggressively. "You mean like this?" he replied, his voice gaining strength. "Exactly," she encouraged, understanding that through his boldness, he was expressing something profound. An invitation to navigate their darkest truths together. Hours passed, their work evolving into a chaotic blend of colors, emotions conflicting yet harmonious. A visual representation of their intertwined lives. They staked their triumphs across the canvas while exposing wounds that had previously festered beneath the surface. Heightened by the thrill of collaboration, a silent bond rebuilt itself, stitch by stitch. But just when Sarah felt the exhilaration of progress, she stumbled upon an unsettling revelation. "Jake, what if we can't translate all this into words?" she voiced, her vulnerability creeping in as she thought of the looming discussions they must face once the mural was complete. His gaze darkened for a second, contemplatively reflecting her own concern. "Then we keep painting until we can. Words are just another brush." Sarah searched his eyes, further emboldened. They had stepped into a territory rife with uncertainty, where the journey toward understanding could dismantle or fortify their bond. Could she really articulate the vulnerability she felt? As they stood before the evolving mural, alive with untamed sentiment, she understood that the road ahead would demand diligence, courage, and continued trust to uncover what lay under the vibrant layers. Would they dare to peel back the gloss of color, revealing the raw subject beneath? With every heartbeat, Sarah recognized that diving deeper meant risking everything. The urgency of the journey ahead echoed within her, awakening a sense of determination to confront not just the artwork, but the very essence of who they were together. And as Jake stepped back, assessing their chaotic masterpiece, the question suddenly hung in the air. Would their mural truly reflect their truths, or would its bold colors mask the shadows beneath? Sarah stepped back from the mural, her heart racing as she took in the chaotic whirl of colors and emotions spilling onto the canvas. Each hue represented a truth she had long avoided facing. Their love, their pain, the shadows that crept in when words failed them. The painting was more than mere pigment. It was a gateway into their uncharted territory, a tangible embodiment of the dialogue they hadn't yet dared to unleash. Jake stood beside her, his brow furrowed. "It's not just a mural, is it?" he stated, more as an acknowledgement of the deeper currents flowing between them than a question. "No," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "This is us. It's the love, the resentment, everything we've buried." As they lingered over their creation, an ache lanced through Sarah. She felt a flicker of doubt, a fear that the vivid colors might drown out the muted truth beneath. Could they truly express the spectrum of their experience merely through paint? "Maybe we need to talk before we go any further," Jake suggested cautiously, shattering the spell of silence that had enveloped them. There was an undeniable gravity in his tone, the kind that suggested that words were now as essential as the brushstrokes. Sarah nodded, her stomach tightening at the thought. This was the moment she had dreaded, the vulnerable intersection where their art would collide with the unvarnished truths they had dared to conceal. "You're right," she conceded, turning her gaze to the expansive colors that looked alive, almost pulsating. "But what do we even say?" "Let's start with the truths we've painted, and then bring in the words," he replied, his eyes locked on hers with unexpected resolve. Grasping the paintbrush, Jake pointed to a vibrant splash of crimson smeared next to the indigo. This was our fire," he said, tracing the lines. "But sometimes, fire burns. We've got to talk about that." The words hung in the air, heavy yet relieving at the same time. Sarah took a deep breath, realizing that their art had set the stage for a reckoning, a chance to confront the very emotions that had fueled their collaborative creation. "Okay," she whispered, her voice quaking slightly. "I guess we should begin with our frustrations, and then everything else." She found herself wishing for the right words, those strong enough to cut through the emotional noise. With nimble fingers, she picked up a brush stained with ochre, a color that mirrored the bare branches of a winter tree. Exposed and stark. "This represents our expectations, overshadowing what we initially wanted," she said, pressing the brush on the canvas hesitantly, before transforming it into broad, bold strokes. Jake's face softened, recognizing the leap she was taking. He stepped closer, adding a layer of midnight blue to the edges, deepening the contrast. "You mean those moments when we've let each other down? The missed connections?" "Right," she affirmed, carving the truth into their shared artwork. As they dissected their past mistakes, each brushstroke coursed with tension. Vulnerability bared on that vast canvas mirrored their hearts. The hesitation, once a palpable weight in the room, danced like sparks igniting a wildfire. "This is good," Jake said, relief evident in his voice. They built upon their insights, layer after layer, letting their emotions spill over into vivid colors. It was a dialogue without filters, and as they painted, a certain magic unfolded. Not just in the mural, but in their exchange. With every revelation, Sarah felt the burgeoning realization that they were on the precipice of something new. This wasn't just an artistic endeavor. It was the birth of honesty, the revelation of capabilities that extended far beyond mere creativity. They were sculpting their future, one revelation at a time. But just as the truth began to solidify, an impulsive thought struck her. What if we invite someone in for a session? A therapist, perhaps? Someone to guide us through this? Jake paused, his expression shifting from surprise to contemplation. That could expose everything. Are we ready for that? The weight of the question hung uncomfortably between them, intensifying the atmosphere laden with emotions yet to be fully explored. Cloaked in uncertainty, they stood at a fork in their paths, embracing the intimacy of their truths or deepening the journey with professional help. As the mural continued to evolve, a flicker of determination lit inside Sarah. The colors danced as if in anticipation of the next step. Would they take the plunge into even deeper vulnerability, or would fear hold them back? An exhilarating sense of purpose wove through Sarah's mind, her heart pounding at the possibilities. "Let's take our time," she whispered, the weight of potential wrapped tightly around her. "We'll figure it out, together." With the image of the mural shimmering brightly behind her, Sarah knew that the journey revealing their truths was only just beginning. Would visiting a therapist bridge the chasm of their misunderstandings, or would it expose vulnerabilities neither was prepared to face? The days melted into a series of brushstrokes and late-night conversations as Sarah and Jake remained enveloped in their mural. Each session brought them closer to unearthing a delicate balance between artistry and honesty. Yet beneath that vibrant rhythm, uncertainty pulsed through Sarah like a second heartbeat. After reaching a tentative understanding about inviting a therapist into their journey, Sarah found herself wrestling with apprehension. The weight of past words lingered like old paint, dried and chipped, difficult to renew. Every evening as she mixed colors, she considered the depth of the dialogue they might unlock during a session. Vulnerability had been their silent partner in creating this mural, yet the prospect of exposing themselves to another felt altogether different. One late afternoon, with golden light cascading into the studio, Sarah turned to Jake while they cleaned the brushes. "I've been thinking about what it means to really be seen," she said, her voice low. "To unravel everything, together, under the guidance of someone who's trained to navigate this terrain." Jake paused, his brow furrowing. "You're feeling that push toward professional help, aren't you? It's not about just revealing ourselves through paint anymore." "Right," she admitted, her voice tinged with urgency. "It's about exploring the layers beneath the surface. I'm learning that honesty is not just freeing, it's terrifying. The fear of judgment or misunderstanding looms, and I can't shake it." Jake's expression changed from concern to understanding. "You don't have to push yourself too fast, Sarah. Emotions surface in unexpected ways. It's okay to take small steps." She nodded, but inside, a tumult of questions stirred. How would their stories fold together in the presence of a therapist? Would they be ready for the magnification of their issues? The mural had become a beautiful distraction, but it had also revealed unsteady ground. Realizing the need to ground herself amidst her thoughts, Sarah began jotting down her feelings in a leather-bound journal, her ideas flowing out like paint. Some pages were messy sketches of fear, others, bright bursts of hope and dreams. It was a refuge, an exploration of her innermost thoughts. Subconsciously, she was constructing her narrative, slowly sculpting a path toward clarity. One night, she flipped through the pages, and something caught her eye. A sentence she had scribbled during a moment of frustration. "Facing the truth may hurt, but it is the only way to find freedom." The recognition struck her like a brush against canvas. This wasn't merely about revealing pain or discomfort. It was about reclaiming her voice, her agency. Empowered by that realization, Sarah made a choice. The next morning, she approached Jake with renewed energy. "Let's reach out to that therapist," she said, her words spilling out as her heart raced. "If we're ever to navigate those deeper currents, we need a guide." Jake looked at her, surprise dancing in his eyes. "You're ready, aren't you?" he asked, a mix of admiration and concern spiraling in his expression. "I don't want to live in uncertainty anymore," she replied, resolve flooding her voice. "This mural deserves our truest selves, and I want to honor that." Thanks to their newfound commitment, Sarah felt lifted. They began drafting questions for their first session, each inquiry revealing layers of unexamined thoughts and deep-seated fears. Every conversation came with its own thrill. A dance toward catharsis, yet a jumble of trepidation simmered alongside it. But as the week crept forward, a shadow loomed within their preparations. Jake had begun to withdraw, his excitement giving way to a cloud of contemplation that hovered ominously around him. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked one day, touching his arm gently. He turned to her, vulnerability spilling from his eyes. "I'm nervous, Sarah. What if we can't handle what comes up? What if it breaks us?" The rawness of the question sliced through the air. The unknown twisted into a knot deep within her. Doubt and determination wrestled for dominance. Could they truly face the tumult of their relationship with professional help? Was this the inflection point that would either forge a stronger bond or tear them apart? As uncertainty cradled her thoughts, Sarah realized that they were on the brink of something monumental. The next session would require them to travel not only into their shared past, but into the visceral depths of their souls. Would they find strength, or would fear take hold? And as she watched the colors of their mural shape shifting in the soft light, one question nagged. What transformative truths awaited them in that therapist's office? The day of their first therapy session arrived, cloaked in a veil of anticipation that made Sarah's heart race. She felt a mix of excitement and apprehension coiling in her stomach. The mural had become a sanctuary, validating their layered experiences through art. Yet she knew they were stepping into unknown territory. Today they would lay bare their vulnerabilities, turning pain into dialogue under the watchful eye of a professional. Jake's face reflected his own anxieties. He sat opposite her in the small therapy room, his fingers tapping nervously on his knee. She could see the internal debate flickering in his eyes. Courage played against the fear of what truths might emerge. "Are you ready?" Sarah whispered, hoping to share some of her resolve with him. He took a deep breath, nodding but offering no verbal reassurance. Seconds felt like hours as they waited for the therapist, an unfamiliar figure who would soon hold the power to unravel their tightly woven narratives. The door creaked open, and in walked Dr. Daniels, exuding calm and warmth. She introduced herself, her voice a soothing balm that eased Sarah's nerves, if only slightly. But as the initial pleasantries dissipated, uncertainty crept back into the room. "Would you like to share what brought you here today?" Dr. Daniels asked, her eyes inviting yet probing. Jake glanced toward Sarah, seeking her lead, but the pressure made her throat tighten. The silence stretched like a taut canvas between them. Unanswered questions hung in the air. Taking a leap, Sarah began. "We want to understand our relationship better." She felt her words quake in her chest as she continued. "We've thought we were growing together, but we realized we're also scared." Dr. Daniels nodded, her eyes never wavering as she encouraged them with simple prompts, drawing out their shared fears and hopes. With each sentence, the atmosphere deepened. They spoke about their mural, the colors symbolizing their emotions, while simultaneously revealing unspoken grievances and insecurities. As they talked, Sarah noticed Jake's transformation. His initial hesitance began to thaw, revealing a raw honesty that surprised her. "I feel like I'm losing control, and that terrifies me. What if we go too far down a path we can't return from?" he confessed, his voice quaking. The revelation cut through Sarah like a sharp brush against a rough canvas. She understood this struggle. Control had been her own silent battles. It dawned on her that their individual fears had been shackles, binding them to a limited understanding of themselves and each other. Maybe the freedom lies not in control, but in surrendering to the process, Sarah suggested, her heart thumping audibly in her chest as she felt the dawn of a new understanding. "We can handle what comes up if we face it together." Dr. Daniels leaned in, guiding their conversation deeper. "What do you think is at the root of that fear?" she probed, digging into the soil of their emotional landscape. Their dialogue flowed like paint across the canvas, layers building, revealing shadows of their pasts and hopes for connection. As they peeled back their vulnerabilities, Sarah felt a disarming clarity. The ugliness of fear could be transformed into brushstrokes of understanding. Yet amidst this newfound insight, a nagging thought whispered through her mind. What if they cracked open doors better left nailed shut? Doubt flickered like an uneasily held palette, splattering color onto their conversation. Once the session concluded, Sarah and Jake stepped outside. The world greeted them with a rush of crisp air, but the tension clung between them. That was intense, Jake said hesitantly. Yeah, but liberating, Sarah replied, hoping her uncertainty didn't fracture the budding optimism. We're finally talking about things that matter. As they walked together, a layer of tension rose and fell, like brushstrokes against their shared canvas. With each step, she felt them inching closer to understanding one another. Yet another question lingered. How much of themselves were they truly prepared to confront? The thread of their connection began to weave a new tapestry of trust, but what lay ahead still felt immense and daunting. And just as they embraced the beginning of this journey, a message pinged on Sarah's phone unexpectedly, casting a shadow of doubt over their progress. Would this new revelation challenge everything they'd begun to unveil? Sarah pulled her phone from her pocket, her fingers trembling slightly as she glanced at the notification. The name illuminated on the screen sent a jolt through her system. "Are you seriously kidding me?" she muttered, her mind racing. It was a message from an unknown number, but the words within were unmistakable. "We need to talk about Jake." For a moment the air felt thick, the warmth of the sun dulled by a rush of anxiety that redirected her focus. Jake was already walking a few steps ahead, lost in thought, unaware of the internal storm churning within Sarah. She felt the urge to call out to him, to share her apprehension, but the weight of the words on her screen clung to her tongue like a forbidden truth. "Sarah!" Jake's voice broke her reverie as he turned back to her. "What's wrong? You look pale." "Just getting a weird message," she replied, trying to mask her turmoil with a nonchalant wave of her hand. Her heart raced with the implications of the message. Who was this person? What could they possibly want to tell her that was tied to Jake? "Something about my mural?" he asked, his eyes narrowing with concern. "Let's just get home first. I'll deal with it there," she promised, hoping to quell the rising tide of her anxiety. As they made their way back, her mind replayed snippets of their session, clinging to the deeper truth that emerged. Those moments of vulnerability had forged a new path, yet now, looming shadows of doubt threatened to overpower their progress. Once inside their apartment, the familiar scents and the softness of the couch offered a brief reprieve. Sarah paced the room, her nerves electric. Jake was sitting, watching her with apprehension. It was as though he sensed that something pivotal was about to unfold. "Shouldn't you open it?" he suggested, his tone laced with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Okay," Sarah said, finally yielding. The phone felt heavier in her grasp as she opened the message. A name she recognized now flashed at her, a name she wished she didn't know. Megan. Megan was Jake's sister, someone who had stayed in the background of Sarah's life, but always loomed with unspoken complexities. "Hey, it's been a long time since we caught up. I need you to know something about Jake." "It's important." Her heart raced. What could Megan possibly say that would turn their world upside down? Suddenly, the bond they were beginning to build in therapy felt tenuous, strained by the weight of external scrutiny. What if Megan's message contradicted all they were working to understand? "Sarah!" Jake's voice once again cut through her spiraling thoughts, but this time there was a note of urgency. "What are you thinking?" "I don't know, it just..." It feels like this could change everything. She looked at him, desperation clinging to her words. What is it, Jake? Is there something you haven't told me? Something Megan knows? No, he replied too quickly, the crease between his brows deepening. I don't want this to come between us. Whatever she has to say doesn't define us. Could it really be that simple? Sarah felt the clenching of a visceral challenge deep within. Trust and doubt danced within her like two opposing strokes on a canvas, each battling for dominance. I need you to promise me, she said, swallowing hard, her resolve momentarily faltering. If there's something to this, we confront it now. I can't go back to wondering. Jake shifted, discomfort rippling through him as he wavered in his response. In that moment, Sarah realized how fragile their newfound connection was. Each revelation was a brushstroke capable of altering their entire masterpiece. As she processed the implications of Megan's words, a chilling thought struck her. What if the next brushstroke shattered the canvas they'd begun to build together? Fingers trembling, she made a decision. They would face this head-on, no matter how terrifying the truth could be. The time had come to confront whatever lay hidden beneath the layers they had yet to peel back. And just as she opened her mouth to demand an answer, a second notification chimed in, and the ground beneath her felt like it slipped away. What more did Megan have to reveal? The second notification blinked ominously on the screen, jarring Sarah from her thoughts. She could feel the tension in the air, thickening like fog. Swallowing her apprehension, she clicked the message, bracing herself for whatever revelation would come next. A shiver ran through her as she read the new text. It's about Jake's past. You deserve to know. All at once the room shrank, and her chest tightened. This felt less like mere curiosity, and more like an impending storm. She glanced at Jake, who was watching her with a palpable blend of anxiety and concern. The vulnerability carved into his features struck her hard, and she questioned whether his past, whatever it might contain, could alter the fragile groundwork of trust they were building. We need to talk about this, Jake, she said, her voice trembling. Megan says it's about your past. Let's just focus on us, Sarah, Jake replied, his tone shifting to a defensive edge, eyes darting away. But how can we? What if there's something there we don't understand? The words rushed out, filled with a mix of fear and urgency. Taking a moment to gather himself, Jake sighed and leaned forward, his gaze intense. I know I haven't been open about everything that happened before you and I met, but I don't want to use that as a reason for us to distance ourselves. We've come so far. Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes. There was a simmering conflict inside her. In therapy, they had scratched the surface, but could they truly build a future while half-concealed truths loomed in the background? The uncertainty of what lay ahead gnawed at her. What do we do then? She asked quietly, her voice a choked whisper. Do we just ignore it? No, Jake said, his calm fury breaking through. We face it. If Megan thinks it's important, then we need to hear what she has to say. But I swear, no matter what it is, it does not change how I feel about you. At his declaration, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Jake's assertiveness pushed aside some of her anxiety, but her resolve remained tenuous. Who was she, truly, if they left these pieces unexamined? She was a woman determined not to let their relationship be defined by secrets, yet terrified of what digging deeper might unearth. With a decisive nod, Sarah began typing a response to Megan, uncertainty bubbling beneath her exterior. She needed to know, both for herself and for Jake. As her fingers danced across the screen, she felt a surge of empowerment. This was part of her journey. Confronting the hidden layers of their lives would only strengthen her. The catharsis of honesty had become vital in her mind, and it was a step she had to take for her own growth. Once the message was sent, she sat back, inhaling deeply. "Are you ready for whatever comes next?" Sarah asked, trying to catch Jake's eye, a mixture of hope and fear trembling on her lips. "Ready or not?" He reached for her hand and pulled her closer. "We can't let this shake our foundation. We'll navigate through it together." Suddenly, the stillness felt charged with potential. The intimacy between them thickened, wrapped in an unspoken promise of fidelity and strength. Yet with each beat of her heart, the weight of uncertainty clung to her like a shroud. In their journey towards understanding, could they truly overcome the shadows of the past? Just then, the sound of her phone chimed again with a message from Megan. "Let's meet tomorrow. There's so much more to say." An unsettling flutter of anxiety pulsed through Sarah. This wasn't just about Jake's past. It heralded complications and decisions looming larger than she'd anticipated. As they sat in their little bubble of uncertainty, Sarah realized the true complexity of the world they were about to enter. Each revelation threatened to reshape their trajectory, and she wondered how close they now were to a reckoning. Would they emerge stronger, or be weighed down by the truths yet to unfold? The next day held the potential for either clarity or chaos, and as Sarah tried to calm her racing heart, one thought crystallized in her mind. The time for evasive maneuvers was over. They had to confront the truth, no matter how daunting it seemed. And as she glanced at Jake, she could almost see the lines of the future begin to shift beneath the weight of their decisions, each stroke of the brush promising a new creation or a complete ruin. The afternoon sun softened the stark edges of the room as Sarah prepared herself for the upcoming meeting. There was a peculiar sensation of courage mingled with dread coiling in her stomach. She was determined to unearth the truth, not just for Jake's sake, but for her own clarity and peace. Uncertainty had long been her shackle, and today, she resolved to break free. Sitting at the small cafe table, waiting for Megan, Sarah replayed the moments leading up to this decision. Navigating through emotional complexities had often felt like weaving through a labyrinth, but it was becoming increasingly clear that confronting the unknown was the only path to take. The lessons from her sessions with her therapist loomed large. Authenticity demanded acknowledgement, and avoidance only bred fear. As she sipped her coffee, Sarah's thoughts drifted to Jake. Each glance they shared, every laughter that danced between them filled her with warmth. Yet the knowledge that shadows lurked behind Jake's past created a fissure in her joy. How could she trust in the future with the weight of unexamined history hanging over them? When Megan approached, her expression was serious, but tinged with compassion. Sarah gestured for her to sit, steeling her resolve in anticipation of whatever revelations lay ahead. "Thanks for meeting with me, Sarah," Megan began, her voice a blend of warmth and caution. "There's so much we need to cover regarding Jake." Taking a deep breath, Sarah nodded. This was her moment of discovery, the pivotal point that might illuminate or darken their path ahead. She could feel her heart racing in response to the gravity of the situation. "I received your message about Jake's past. What do I need to know?" Sarah asked, her tone steady despite the rapid thrum of her pulse. Megan hesitated, scanning Sarah's face, gauging her willingness to walk this tightrope. "Jake has been through a lot that he hasn't fully shared with you. It's not just a few missteps. It's significant. It shaped who he is today." A sharp twist of concern pierced through Sarah. Would these revelations dismantle the trust they'd been fostering? Yet she knew that understanding Jake's complexities could either fortify their bond or clarify the limitations of their relationship. "What do you mean by significant?" Megan sighed. Discussing Jake's past was delicate. "Before you met him, he was in a toxic relationship that left deep scars. He struggles with trust and intimacy. Sometimes his past influences his actions in ways he doesn't even recognize." With each word, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirled inside Sarah. a mixture of empathy, sadness, and an alarming realization that their relationship had deeper currents than she'd perceived. This wasn't just about Jake's secrets. It was about her own choices, her commitment to understanding and supporting him through these complexities. "I want to help him," Sarah said, her voice firm. "But he has to want it too. Is he ready to confront this? To dig deeper?" Megan leaned in, her eyes serious. "I believe he is, but he needs your support. You must talk to him openly. Only then will you both be able to navigate the shadows together." Sarah felt the weight of Megan's gaze settle on her, the responsibility of partnership pressing down on her shoulders. Could she be the anchor Jake needed? Or would the gravity of his past pull them apart? After a long silence filled with contemplation, Sarah resolved to foster this openness within their relationship. She would create a space for Jake to share, devoid of judgment or fear. But she also understood the stakes. Survival depended on both of them being prepared to face truths that could potentially fracture their bond. As the conversation drew to a close, Sarah felt the determination flare within her again, the stubborn resolve that had urged her toward personal growth. But before leaving, she realized one thing that troubled her. Who was she becoming in this journey? Would she be strong enough to face whatever lay ahead? That evening, as she returned home, Sarah confronted her reflection. The path she had ventured on felt both exhilarating and daunting. A new chapter was waiting, poised on the brink of transformation. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jake. "Can we talk later? I've been thinking a lot." A sense of urgency enveloped her. The reckoning was about to begin, and the truth could reshape everything. Would she be ready for the storm? Would Jake be prepared to confront the shadows that haunted him? As she readied herself for the conversation ahead, one question echoed in her mind, demanding to be answered. What would they discover together in the fragile daylight of honesty? The conversation hung in the air, thick with anticipation. Later that day, Sarah and Jake stood together in their cozy living room, the faint smell of paint lingering, a reminder of their mural. The unfinished masterpiece reflected not only their emotional turbulence, but also their commitment to unveiling deeper truths. Both of them understood this moment was pivotal, perhaps even transformative. It was a threshold they could either cross together or risk stepping away from. "Can we go for a walk?" Jake's voice broke the stillness, his eyes seeking hers. The vulnerability etched on his face mirrored her own apprehension. "Of course," she replied, her heart racing. The urgency of the conversation loomed ahead like a brushstroke waiting to be applied to the canvas. As they wandered through their neighborhood, the trees towered overhead, their branches forming a protective arch as though nature itself held its breath in expectation. The crisp air stung lightly against Sarah's cheeks, grounding her in the present moment, while the weight of uncertainties remained. "About what Megan said," Jake began hesitantly, his breath visible in the chill, as if each word carried a weight of its own. "It's true. I've never shared everything from my past." Sarah nodded, keeping her voice steady. "I want to understand, Jake. I think we need to explore this together. It's essential for where we go from here." "I think I've avoided talking about it because I didn't want it to define who I am. I'm scared," he admitted, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that showcased his inner turmoil. "You're not defined by your past," she assured him, her hand instinctively reaching for his. "But it shapes how you experience today." He paused, the sincerity of her words resonating deeply. "This toxic relationship. It left scars I'm still healing from. Sometimes it feels easier to hide those parts and push people away. But with you, it's different." A lump formed in Sarah's throat. "I want to be here for you, through the messiness of it all. But you have to meet me halfway." Jake drew in a deep breath, gathering courage. I'm committed to doing just that, if you are. His eyes held a mix of hope and fear. I am, she responded, her voice robust and unwavering. The words felt like an opening, a declaration that a pathway toward healing was within reach, but it required brave exploration. Let's finish our mural together, Jake suggested as they continued their walk, a flicker of excitement brewing within him. We can express these truths, layer by layer. The chaos, the healing, everything. A smile broke through Sarah's apprehension. I love that idea. We can canvas our journey together, our pain and growth, without hiding anything. Jake squeezed her hand. I want to lay bare the parts that scare me. I want to paint our fears along with our love. Sarah's heart raced. They had both transformed. It was no longer just about the mural. It was about understanding, empowering, and fortifying their bond through every hue and shadow. Realization struck her. This was the proactive choice she had sought every day during their healing journey. That evening, upon returning home, they stood shoulder to shoulder before their mural, armed with brushes and colors they had chosen deliberately. The canvas before them whispered promises of vulnerability. With each brushstroke, they began to capture feelings they had previously numbed, each merging of colors, telling stories of hurt, hope, and ambition. Together, they stretched past the initial layers of their fears, channeling their pain into art while interweaving intricate patterns of understanding. See that area? Jake pointed to a dark swirl that was quickly becoming interspersed with bursts of vivid colors. That's where I felt trapped. Allie felt like a tidal wave I couldn't escape, masking who I was beneath all those layers. I see it, Sarah replied as she painted in bright yellows around Jake's dark area. But look at how it connects to the light. Your struggles can lead to something transformative. As they painted, their voices had morphed into instruments of healing, resonating with newfound understanding. Laughter spilled into spaces previously filled with silence, erasing the chasms that had existed before. Once the mural was complete, Sarah stepped back and admired their work. A kaleidoscope of emotions sprawled across the canvas, depicting the fusion of chaos and beauty, unearthed truths given life. Each imperfection was a testament to their journey, a narrative that reflected their resolve to confront uncertainty head-on. Can you believe we did this? Jake breathed, awe evident in his voice. Yes. Together we conquered something significant tonight, she replied, her heart swelling with pride and a renewed sense of connection. The mural they created was now a symbol of empowerment. It captured not only their individual growth, but the beauty of collective healing. With each brushstroke, they demonstrated undeniable resilience. The imperfections outlined the strong contours of their relationship. As they stood hand in hand, they embraced the truths that guided them to this very moment, a bond fortified by their willingness to face fears. I'm excited for what's next, Sarah declared, the weight of her journey lightening. Me too, Jake beamed, finally revealing a clearness in his eyes she'd longed to see. We'll tackle anything, side by side. And as they looked at their masterpiece, the embodiment of their transformative journey, it dawned on them that both the obstacles and triumphs would forever shape their connection, leading them toward a shared future filled with honesty and openness. This realization crystallized Sarah's understanding of what it meant to have arrived at a fulfilling personal growth. She felt the weight of her past fade behind her, replaced with the confidence to confront whatever lay ahead. With hearts intertwined and colors alive, they now knew that every canvas of their lives would continue to blossom as they embraced their emotional truths. Now was the moment to celebrate their transformation and the incredible power of honest connection. As they stepped away from the mural filled with pride, each of them took a deep breath, a promise of new beginnings, tingling in the cool evening air. This was finally the moment to embrace all that they had conquered and the further journey that lay ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.